makes it more difficult for us to create jobs and opportunities in this great country. But it is immoral to do to future generations because they get left, don't they, holding the bag. That's not fair. That's why this election is so important. And then the job-killing legislation that continues to come from Washington. Think about it. The health care legislation is keeping us from creating jobs here in Ohio because it's raising the costs of health care for small business people. I've been talking to a lot of them in all 88 counties of Ohio, and I can tell you they're not creating jobs in part because of the new big government health care legislation. We need to turn that around. We need to repeal it and replace it with something that makes sense to get costs down and help people get coverage and help us create jobs here in Ohio and around the country. The taxes. I mean, unbelievably, this administration, this Congress believes we should be raising taxes now. And at year end, they're scheduled to go up. As you're trying to climb out of a recession, folks, it's not the right time to raise taxes, is it? No. We need to be sure we're providing small businesses instead with incentives to hire more people by providing them tax relief. It's a different philosophy. It's a different philosophy. The cap and trade legislation you've heard a lot about. And I've seen a guy driving around Muskingum County today with a trailer. And I don't know who this guy is, but he is everywhere. And it shows a picture of your opponent and with Nancy Pelosi. And it says something like, look how they voted and think about how we're going to vote. Right? Yeah. I don't know who this guy is, but he deserves an award. But I've seen him in 5 different places in the last couple hours in Muskingum County. Oh, there he is. All right, raise your hand. But here's the deal. The cap and trade energy tax would be terrible for our great state and really bad for eastern and southeastern Ohio. Why? Because it taxes coal, and it taxes manufacturing, and it taxes, therefore, our families and our job creation. There's a study out showing we would lose 100,000 jobs in Ohio if cap and trade were passed by the Senate. It's already passed the House. Can we afford to lose another 100,000 jobs here in the state of Ohio? No, we can't. Here's the good news. On spending, on taxes, on health care, on cap and trade and energy, there's a better way. On all these issues. And that's what's exciting about this election to me. We're not just talking about what's wrong. We're talking about a better way to get American families and Ohio families back on track, to get our economy back on track, to help small businesses, providing tax relief. In energy, think of the opportunities that we've got here in the state of Ohio. We've got natural gas under the ground here. A huge new shale find that includes not just Pennsylvania, West Virginia, but also Ohio, that enables us to get less dependent on foreign oil, enables us to have cleaner energy, and to create jobs right here in Ohio. Doesn't that make sense? Let's do it. Let's do it. We've got a better way, but we need leadership, and we need to have a good day on Tuesday in order to promote that agenda, don't we? Well, here's the good news in that regard. We have got, in this district, a candidate for the United States Congress who will not only represent the district well because he knows it and has lived it, but also will be able to help to make John Boehner the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Now, that's pretty exciting. What a great opportunity. If you've been watching John Boehner over the last several months as this election has progressed, I think what you'll see is a guy who's dead serious. Not just about winning an election, but he's dead serious about helping the people. Helping turn things around and create jobs and opportunity by promoting policies that make sense for our economy, for our small businesses, for Muskingum County, for the state of Ohio. John Boehner is going to be a terrific speaker because he's a guy who understands that we need to take Ohio common sense to Washington, D.C. It'll be a great day for Ohio and a great day for America if we have a good day on Tuesday. I'd now like for you all to let me introduce the next congressman from the 18th District. His name is Bob Gibbs. Many of you know him well. Some of you may not know that before he got involved in politics, he was a farmer, small business owner as he is now, but he was also president of the Ohio Farm Bureau. Now, That's pretty good background, don't you think? Our agriculture economy is the #1 industry in Ohio, the #1 industry in this county. It's incredibly important that our small business owners, who are also farmers, get the kind of help they need. He knows how to do it because he's been there and done that. Second, he has distinguished himself in Columbus. 8 years in the legislature as a state representative and now a state senator. He's a guy with integrity and a guy who I'm very proud to stand next to today and stand next to in this election. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the next Congressman, Bob Gibbs.
Are you ready? Are you ready to take back the country from the tax suspenders? 3 days. 3 days. Thanks, Rob. I've known Rob for a long time, and he's a great guy. And he's going to be the best U.S. Senator in the U.S. Senate that we've ever seen. He knows how to cut the budget. He knows how to balance the budget, and he's got common sense, and he knows how to make things work. And really appreciate you being here today, Rob. And my good friend John Husted, Dave Yost, they're gonna win Ohio back, and we're gonna get John Casey next governor, right? And your own from Muskingum County, Troy Balderson, doing a great job in the State House. And I can't forget about my other good friend Jimmy Stewart, your state senator from this area. He came in 33. He's doing a great job, and they got a lot of work to do in Columbus next January, but they're going to get it done under the leadership of John Casey. Now, I'm kind of a numbers guy, and I've been looking at some of these numbers. When Zach Space took his seat in Congress in January 2007 and Nancy Pelosi became Speaker, the national debt was $8 trillion. Today they tell me the national debt's $13.5 trillion. Does that sound like a big problem, doesn't it? Yeah. It just amazes me. Now, I don't know, I'll get corrected on this, but I think back in August, Nancy Pelosi called everybody back into Congress to come back that one day on a Tuesday to spend $26 billion that they don't have. And on Monday that week, Zach Space put out a press release. Usually is at least one press release a day blasting me and saying that I should support that $26 billion expenditure because it's deficit neutral. And here's how it's deficit neutral under his rationale. $10 billion of the $26 billion, they're going to raise taxes on American businesses that happen to do business overseas. Guess what? That's a lot of businesses here in the 18th. That's going to encourage them to either leave or kill more jobs. But the real one I really think is really unbelievable. $16 billion of that $26 billion, he said, it's deficit neutral because they're going to spend less money. They're not going to spend as much on food stamps. But the catch was, not until 4 years. And I thought, well, wait a second. That means if somebody wants to go out and buy a boat or whatever, and they don't have the money, so they convince somebody to loan them the money, but they justify in their mind it's all right to do that expenditure because in 4 years they're going to spend less money. That's how they're going to balance the budget. Are you kidding me? This is insanity. So we can't have people in Congress that think that way. We got to have people in Congress that understand how the economy works, how businesses work, and how we create jobs. And the government does not create jobs. The private sector does, right? Now, here's another number that kind of blows me away. Remember back in February of 2009, they said, hey, we got to pass this stimulus, unemployment can't go above 8%. Well, here's the results. I think it's about 3.5 million people now in the private sector have lost their jobs, and have added over $3 trillion in debt. That's really working well. Now they come out and say, well, they didn't spend enough. Nearly $1 trillion, not enough. This is insanity. We're going to give these people their pink slips come Tuesday, right? You might already heard this whole story, but here's how I kind of look at things. Since I've written on both sides of a paycheck and I've hired people and I kind of know how things work that way. But, we have to create prosperity in this country. Because when you create prosperity, you create jobs and opportunities, okay? And, that all the policies coming out of Washington, D.C. right now are putting big hurdles or blockades against the entrepreneurs, the employers, our innovators to go out and create prosperity. And you don't pass things like a national energy tax, cap and trade. You don't pass Obamacare. You don't have all this uncertainty. You don't have a deficit that's in the trillions of dollars and add to the debt. that's uncertainty. So the employers and all our entrepreneurs are kind of sitting on their hands because they're scared to death to risk capital. And they got to get the right signals from Washington. And the way we get the right signals from Washington is we cut that federal deficit. We got to get spending under control. That's number one. Number two, we got to roll back these massive tax increases. And number three, we need regulatory reform and have common sense regulations that make economic sense. We do those three things. We bring confidence back in the economy. And the good thing I find out when I meet out with employers every day is there's a lot of pent-up demand out there. And they're ready to invest in their businesses and start hiring people back and creating jobs. But they got to have confidence that we're moving forward on some stable economic ground. I want to go back to the prosperity thing just for a second. There's really three ways to create prosperity. One is we develop our natural resources. You drill for it or you mine it. We can do that responsibly, and that will help us with some other issues, right? Number two, you raise or grow it, agriculture. Number three, you make it, manufacturing. When you do those types of things, you create wealth and prosperity and jobs and opportunities. But like I said, this Congress and this administration is putting blockades up against those people, the risk takers in this nation, that create the jobs because they're raising more government regulations, burdensome regulations, higher taxes, higher costs, and they're not going to invest. And that's what we got to turn this country around, and that's why this election nationally is so important. Because if we don't change this, just like Rod Portman said, we're going down the tubes. And this deficit spending, it's also a national security issue. We're borrowing money from China. I think that's pretty explanatory, not really a good thing. But then that means there's more money with all this huge deficit spending and debt. The money that does come into the federal government, more of it has to go to service the debt, interest. That's less money for national defense. Important things like the federal government should be doing. Now think about this. How did the Cold War end? How did the Soviet Union fall apart? There wasn't a shot fired. We bankrupted them. We're bankrupting ourselves. That's why we got to turn this around, because this is a national security issue. We're going to risk passing on to our kids a mortgage that's unsustainable. We risk on passing on a country that's no longer free, but bigger and bigger government, and that erodes our God-given constitutional freedoms. So I'm committed. We're going to turn this around, get the economy going, get people back to work by getting the spending under control, cutting taxes, and regulatory reform. And I'm proud. I'm going to be proud. My very first vote that I'm going to cast is from the next speaker from Ohio for the United States House of Representatives, Speaker John Boehner. That's going to be my first vote. Speaker Boehner and all the rest of them are going to bring this country back, because I have full faith in the private sector. They're the ones that take the jobs and get things moving. And this country was founded on an idea that free people have religious freedom, political freedom, and economic freedom, can be successful to their God-given talents. And that's what we're going to do. That's what's made this country great. Innovation. We're going to release that American spirit once again, and we're going to be the greatest country in the world again. Thank you.